What is going on at LSU? We're going to get to the bottom of it today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Hopefully you're having a great Wednesday. And boy, we got a lot to get to, and it's a lot of off the field stuff because boy, oh boy, it's almost convenient. Usually we, full disclosure, tape this the night before. So we taped Tuesday's pod on Monday night. I wake up the next morning and I'm like, oh goodness, what is going on? Because here we are, and we're continuing to talk about Brian Kelly at LSU, mainly because he is now suing the university, saying he wasn't formally terminated. This coming from Brian Kelly's attorney, and ESPN put out a big story about it. I believe this was like late Monday night, early Tuesday morning. I was dead asleep and I saw a notification when I woke up. I was like, okay, we got something to talk about. I wanted to make sure I got as much information as possible before really deep diving into this. And it's amazing to see, per the lawsuit, I'm going to go ahead and quote this. LSU's representatives had a call with Coach Kelly's representatives where LSU took the position that Kelly had not been formally terminated and informed Coach Kelly's representatives for the very first time that LSU believed grounds for termination for cause existed. For those that don't know, Kelly's contract does include a for-cause termination clause that allows for his firing due to material and substantial NCAA rule violations, being convicted of any felony, or any crime involving gambling, drugs, or alcohol, or engaging in serious misconduct, which either displays a continual serious disrespect for the mission of LSU or constitutes moral turpitude, which is a phenomenal, $5 word there, turpitude. And in case you don't know what moral turpitude means, it's describing behavior that violates community standards of honesty, justice, or morality. So again, it's a very vague term, but you also got to realize that the only thing that I would say is the only ground that LSU can stand on when it comes to this. Again, I'm no lawyer, didn't take any classes, but I've sure watched my cousin Vinny several times over. But I digress. Looking at everything that's being said in the article ESPN put out about Brian Kelly's situation, that statement engaging in serious misconduct, which either displays a continual serious disrespect for the mission of LSU, that might be the only ground they can stand on, but trust me, it is very, 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 very shaky ground, if anything. Just that phrase. Serious disrespect for the mission of LSU. And the mission of LSU is to win national championships and to be consistently in the conversation to win national championships. There's no guarantees that they can get national championships year after year after year. Everybody and their mama, I guarantee you, they would love to have an opportunity to win national championships every year. But that's not the complete mission. It's always going to be difficult, especially in the SEC, to do so consistently, and especially as we're seeing the Big Ten is starting to make significant leaps. So they can say that he disrespected the mission of LSU with the way this season handled, but I feel like there's a very different line that's going to be crossed here. And the fact they're saying it's a for-cause termination clause, that basically means LSU, if there was a for-cause, they can essentially walk away from this and not pay BK a single dime. And obviously, Brian Kelly wants his money, and I think it's justified seeing this kind of situation going down. And again, it's been an absolute firestorm of issues with LSU, and it's at the worst possible moment when you're trying to court your next head coach of the LSU Tigers. You're probably not going to get the guy that you want till we get to mid-December, maybe even into the college football playoff if the dream coach is still available. And of course, we're talking about Lane Kiffin, who I still don't feel like is going to make the jump over. If he wanted to, he could have had the job after Bebe exited stage left, after they said, hey, here's all this money we're going to give you to not coach. And he's like, all right, cool, we'll do it. Meanwhile, Brian Kelly doesn't want to do that. He wants to get all the money that he is owed, and it's $54 million. It's a ton of money that they're going to have to give him to basically go away and do whatever you want with that money. But the last 3 weeks have been an absolute, bleep storm, to say the very least, because you're trying to court a new head coach. Everything is on fire. It seems like fires have been put out slowly but surely, but even then, every time you think that there's a chance that, you can breathe, another fire is popping up. I mean, you just hired a new president, and then he hired a new AD, ripped the interim tag off very quickly, even though it felt like for a minute, based off of some of the phrasing Wade Rouse had to say after the promotion to full-time permanent athletic director Virg Osbury. It seemed like he didn't necessarily know what the word permanent meant, at least in the phrasing of some of the initial questioning, but he got out in front of it, pivoted, and said, this was a misphrasing on my part. We apologize. Let's move on. Let's focus on getting a new head coach for LSU football and getting the right guy. But even then, you have this on top of it. Is if you have a for-cause termination clause in a contract, and that was a 10-year deal. Don't forget about that. I think that's the more insulting thing, is that they gave BK a 10-year deal. So they're going to pay him out $50 million because that deal was so massive. And at the end of the day, that's something that I feel like a lot of programs would just laugh about, not giving him the amount of money that he is supposedly owed. They feel like they should just he should have just gotten the money and let him go. But it's another black eye on a program that does not need this right now when you're trying to find the new head coach. Everything's on fire, and basically you have to say there's no war in Ba Sing Se to these guys, but it's very clear there is a war going on over in Baton Rouge, and it's taken not to the streets, but to the courtroom. We'll get to another lawsuit in a little bit, but I want to kind of pivot over for a minute because I've got some apologies to make. And it's more towards one player in particular, and that is Saints tight end Juwan Johnson. Talked about it a little bit on Monday's pod, recapping the win. Saints are 2-8. It's refreshing to see that the Saints tight end, he seems to be getting better. The beginning of the year was extremely rough. Some crucial catches against Arizona and the 49ers definitely soured me and probably several other people that are fans of the New Orleans Saints on him. But you look at what he's done as the season's progressed, he's gotten a lot better. And in fact, somehow, some way, he's fourth in the league in receiving yards amongst tight ends. We're going to put that little asterisk right there. But comparing to his position, fourth receiving yards in the entire league, that is nothing short of impressive. He had some significant plays last Sunday. Hasn't got as many targets as he did with Spencer Rattler at the helm, but somehow Juwan Johnson feels like he is getting just a little bit better as we proceed through the season. I mean, you look at what happened over the last two games. He got targeted 9 times, caught it 5 for 49 yards and a touchdown. That was against we're going backwards. But he had only got 4 targets. He caught 3 of them for 31 yards and a touchdown. Then this past weekend, 92 yards off of 4 receptions and a touchdown. One of those, mind you, was his first reception. The bulk of those were off of his first reception, which I think more is credited to Tyler Shaw for getting out of the problem, because that was a play that looked like it was burnt from the word go, because the front seven just was loading the box and bringing the wood. And it felt like for a second, Show was going to get sacked for the second straight play, and they were going to have to go punt. And that probably could have changed the momentum in a bad way. That said, he was able to find Juwan Johnson wide open. And I think the only knock I can have on him for that game last week is he probably could have had 2 touchdowns if he just had a little bit more juice and a little bit more jets. I mean, again, I understand this dude, 6'4", 231. He's a bit of a hoss. But if he was able to get some extra little juice going to sprint, I feel like he could have gotten 6 points because nobody was near him when he caught it. If it was like Chris Olave who caught that would have been an easy 6. I think that's the only complaint I can have. But even then, it was a 50-yard reception, and that helped them get a field goal. That was really nice to see. Yards per target, 23 yards, season high for the young man who spent time at Oregon and Penn State. I'm hoping this is a step in the right direction because, again, you look at what he did in the first couple of games of this season. Look at his performance. Not necessarily all that great. So far, he's had 6 drops. It's still not the best look. We're all going to agree that this may be one of his worst seasons, but it's getting better as time is marching on. And I think that is the most important thing if we're looking at his arc as a wide receiver. As a tight end. He's getting better in certain aspects. He's getting a little bit more limited touches over the last 2 games with Tyler Shaw being the guy. But we're seeing him make more of an impact in the process, which is what you want to see. Haven't seen anything too bad from him over the last couple games. Again, he caught all 4 of the passes that were targeted to him last week, which is very nice. He only did that 1 at a time, but that was 2 receptions he had against the New England Patriots, but they didn't really result in anything worth talking about. So hopefully, emphasis on hopefully, with Tyler Shaw at quarterback, he starts to kind of get more confident and maybe doesn't become a safety blanket like Jimmy Graham did in those mid-2010s Saints seasons before the trade for Max Unger. Hopefully we see him kind of progress and more become a really decent quarterback. I don't think he's tight end. I don't think he's that bad. But again, the handful of games that he had in the beginning of the season did not look all that great. 55.6% catch rate against the 49ers. Yet at 50%, you kind of drifted towards the mean for a lot of the games, but now the catch percentage is starting to go up, which is a good sign and a good step in the right direction. Just to reduce the amount of drops you have, and I feel like Juwan Johnson is going to be just fine. And we'll wrap things up, continuing stuff going on in the courtroom. But this time it's a conference against a soon-to-be ex-member, and we're talking about Louisiana Tech. Conference USA early this month filed a public record suit accusing one of his departing members, La Tech, of withholding key documents related to his decision to exit stage left and head over to the Sun Belt Conference. They filed this back on November 5th, naming the University of Louisiana system as a defendant. And this had not been previously reported, and it's the first real act of hostility since La Tech said, yeah, we're splitting to leave Conference USA to become the Sun Belt's 14th member, with Texas State going for the door. And it's kind of wild is to see this entire thing. There's a lot of legal filings that are worth talking about. And the complaint that Conference USA has, they allege that Louisiana Tech and its governing system deliberately withheld records that would undercut the school's claim to its latest multi-million-dollar annual distribution that it received on June 27th. Less than 3 weeks later, the school formally notified the conference of its intention to depart the Sun Belt depart to the Sun Belt, effective July 1st of next year. And Conference USA contends that they violated the bylaws, which require its member schools to give at least a 14-month heads up before withdrawing. And the conference says, however, had LSU adhered to this timeline, it would have forfeited its most recent bounty, since the conference's bylaws also prohibit withdrawing members from receiving distributions following 2 years' notice. And a Louisiana Tech spokesperson said in a statement, quote, Conference USA is clinging to spacious conspiracy theories of their own making. We have provided full transparency to CUSA throughout our exit negotiations and written and verbal communications with conference leadership. He goes on to say, we fully comply with the record's request. The conference movements during the first half of July played out publicly. CUSA could have easily made an additional request for clarification instead of wasting the court's time and its members' resources. We look forward to continuing our negotiations, as this conference move will greatly improve the health and well-being of our student athletes, a priority dear to everyone trusted to lead in this ever-changing environment of college athletics. And that, again, this is a wild story, and I'm sure we'll hear more of it as time goes on, but it makes you wonder, is there a possibility that this lawsuit could result in, instead of La Tech going to the Sun Belt Conference to be the 14th man, to now you seeing La Tech having to stick around in Conference USA while this whole thing gets hashed out in a court of law? Just saying, that is a distinct possibility that could happen very, very soon. But that about do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't yet, make sure you go ahead and follow us today, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, social media, at Louisiana Lunch Hour is how you follow all of us on those social media gimmicks that you have out there. Till tomorrow, talk to you later.